we were talking a little bit about regular, non-sports games and stuff like that. But you guys know that we always like to, you know, get stuff into, get back to the sports game talk as much as possible. So one of the things that I have been kind of mentioning on various platforms for years, I would say last 2 years at least, is the concept of switching the release cycles for sports video games from annual to biannual releases. And I'm going to tell you why I think that, because I'm going to say at one point, I didn't want that at all. I just totally was like, no, absolutely not. That's garbage. No way. Right. But what made me change my mind and become a strong proponent of that is what I've seen done to sports games from a update patch standpoint. Content updates, patch updates, the things that developers are able to do now to games post release makes me feel that the amount of content that could come out after a game is released and then still have somebody literally working on a game for now 18 months as opposed to 8 or 9 now really excites me, because now you get a chance to kind of segment your resources to make better games, because ultimately that's the key, right? Everybody wants to have better games, better sports games. They want to see most of us want to see a bigger jump from NBA 2K19 to NBA 2K20, from Madden 19 to Madden 20, from FIFA 19 to FIFA 20, from MLB The Show 18 to MLB The Show 19. We all want to see this a more significant jump. But the fact of the matter is that the development cycles at this point are too short for us to see this significant jump. But a game like EA UFC 3, which is like on an 18 to 20 month cycle, if you look at the amount of content that has been added in this game from the time it released to now, it's really staggering, right? If you look at a game like Fallout 76, which largely flopped when it came out, and I think it is probably beyond resuscitation, even though they've changed a lot since it came out. I think it is beyond resuscitation because it just died so much early. But it shows you what can happen if you have that time. So I would really love to see that happen. I would let you respond to that initial thought, but I want to also talk about what I think that could look like specifically how I think that could look.
Oh, you want me to go first? Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, I want to know what your initial response is to that concept.
I have two responses, because as if the people know, we come from a show, Sim Hangout, where one of the host of the show is Desire. He's a developer, and so through we originally did a show where we had a bunch of guys who got picked up for 2K, Scott OG, Leftos, and so on and so forth. So I know a bit about the process. And my answer to you is, there's what I would want, and then there's what I think. Now, what I would want the same thing you would want, right? Like if we got a leap like between UFC 2 and 3, that'd be awesome. Because I felt like UFC 3 was better without compromises. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was just a better experience overall. I never need to play UFC 2 again. Don't need to see it. Don't care about it. UFC 3 gave me the MMA experience I desire. Even though I want to see, we talked about this before, career mode, there's certain things we could see better. I'm still happy. That's the point. It's not like with 2K, whereas with 2K, there's certain things that you not just mad because it's not perfect. You mad because it's a version of not perfect that you're so familiar with. So I'm with you on that. However, the problem is that's a good idea, if it works, and it's a terrible idea if it doesn't work. And I mean that both for us as, gamers and for the company, right? And when I say for the company, that's me being realistic about this is a game that sells 10 million copies and makes more money off of the microtransactions than they do off of being a top 3 game throughout the year, right? Like that needs to be said. This game is one of the top games throughout the year, and they still make more money off of microtransactions throughout the year. So putting that at risk, we have to be realistic about that. But putting the realism of the financial element aside, there's also this. Sometimes ideas are bad. And I don't want to be stuck with a bad idea for a 2-year cycle. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes that idea is so structural that an update won't fix it. Where it's like, no, we need the new version. Get this fixed and changed now. So, for instance, let's say, and it's also, if you're talking about updating it to the point that you drastically fix it, then why would I even want a new edition at all? Right? So the lines get a little blurred. I think it's, I think it's not necessarily, I don't want to say realistic. I think there's a lot of danger in a longer cycle for some of these games, particularly at a place like 2K where there's so many different kinds of ideas that you could wind up just being stuck with something you don't like for a longer time.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I do know that time uh, can exacerbate that issue. Extending the time can exacerbate that issue, but I think that we're kind of in that already to a degree. And because we live in such a microwave society where everybody's patience and time and attention span is so much shorter, I think that when somebody gets a I here's the thing. I don't believe that there's any problem that would be so deep at this point where we are with a combination of obviously all of these concepts are dependent upon the team involved utilizing some level of logical planning for a game, prospecting, and that's all the things that go into the process when you plan a new
Right. But
direction.
let
So
me jump in right here because I think this is an important point. And I don't think we're necessarily even disagreeing here.
no, I think
Because
you're more giving cautions to the
yes, it's
concept.
because it's a complex issue.
Yeah.
Like we say this, but it's a very complex issue. So let's say developer X has an idea
Hmm.
and it's an okay idea. It's an idea that 50% of the company is like, I don't know, and the other 50% is like, no, no, it'll be good. This guy has been right before when it looked a little iffy. So you really got to let it rock. Let's say developer Y has a completely opposite idea. On a yearly cycle, developer X gets proven wrong and gets shelved. On a biannual cycle, it turns into that idea gets put more into. You know what I'm saying? So there's certain things that people would not like about. I'm not going to call out a certain feature because that's calling out a certain developer, but there might be things that showed up in the game that the entire community is like, how did this? Why did you waste time putting this in the game when this needed to be fixed? When we've been asking for this forever, and I'm saying it is very, very, very likely that that could be a 2-year mistake, even going into the next thing. Like we might wait 2 years for something we never asked for, never wanted. And when I say that that's likely, I don't mean, oh, but if it goes well, that won't happen. No, there's no way to game plan around that because some of these ideas that have been great have looked the same before they came out. And some of these ideas that have been terrible have looked the same before they came out. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
Right.
not always obvious behind the scenes whether or not something is a terrible idea or a great idea.
I agree, but I think that so to a degree, that kind of approach is what can potentially leave you stagnant. And because one of the things about 2K Right. I'll call 2K out for this specifically. One of the great things about 2K and one of the negative things about 2K is that they usually are willing to try things first.
Yeah.
Things that other people haven't done. And they fall flat on their face sometimes. And then other times they do things that people are like, y'all need to do what 2K is doing. Like,
Right.
and that's their gift and their curse, right? That's their that's their double-edged sword. If there's a better example of that in sports gaming, I don't know what it is for as far as the way they operate. And the way I think this goes is you come up with this development cycle, and say for instance with this biannual approach, right? And say for instance you're saying, hey, we're going to change the entire engine. Like we're going to change. That's what we're doing. Because the whole point of having these huge gaps in between the releases is so that you can make more substantial changes, right? But during that process, you release things like betas. You release things that give an opportunity to kind of test what you're doing. Now, you can never test for everything. We've seen that over and over and over again. And I'm obviously I'm mentioning 2K and I'm mentioning some of these other companies, and we know some of these companies get things wrong, just flat get it wrong with the way they plan it. So my idea is more about doing it the right way, because if any process, if you do it wrong, it's not gonna work out.
Right. And here's my response to you on that. I think for your idea to work, what has to happen is that, and this is not just 2K, this is for all of these companies, because I've actually seen this at EA as well. The producers in charge need to have the right idea.
Mm-hmm.
And the producers with the right idea need to be the ones in charge. Now, I'm not calling out anybody specifically because this applies to everyone. When a producer with the wrong idea is in charge, a 2-year cycle is worse. When a producer with the right idea is in charge, a 2-year cycle might be better. And that is the problem, not
Yes.
the cycle. Like, I
Yes.
understand, I'm with you on the cycle, but before we get to that cycle issue,
Yep.
what
Absolutely.
needs to happen is that the community needs to be very, very clear and vocal and vote with their dollars about these games and about the features that they want, that they don't want, and put pressure on these producers. Because usually when we have an idea, there are at least a few people, sometimes many people in the company that have the same thought, the same idea. But what happens is every opinion doesn't have equal weight and equal value. So if me, you, Portia, Greedy Rashidi, Gonzo Star, we
Right.
all think this thing needs to happen. But there's producer X who's like, I don't think so. It's not going to happen. But if they go a year and the community's like, we hate whoever did this, then the next year they'll be like, my bad, we got to fix it. And the more the games come out, the better chance we have of getting the right producers or the producers with the right idea. I don't want to say the wrong producer because, again, everybody's wrong sometimes, everybody's right sometimes. And when you're constantly inventing, which 2K and a lot of these companies are, but 2K in particular, they're always inventing something new. They're always doing something new. And you can be cynical about the game and say you don't believe that, but that's true.
That is true.
It's just true. If you analyze the process and know enough about gaming and sports gaming, that's just true. So guys are going to be wrong and they need to make mistakes. And sometimes, and when you're making a game that costs millions and millions and millions of dollars to create, you have to, as an audience, accept that those mistakes are sometimes going to be big and they're going to look bad and they're going to be obvious. However, the producers with the right idea need to get their opportunities on a year-by-year basis first before we do that. Because right now, the way these games are trending, I'm seeing a lot of bad ideas getting too much time. And the community knows it. Other people in the gaming companies know it. And the reality of that needs to hit these producers. And the only way the reality of that is going to hit them is if the audience, one way or another, lets them know. So it's not that I dislike your idea. It's just I know that before your idea is viable, there's another issue that has to be solved.
Yeah, I think I think that I agree with what you're saying, but like you said, I don't think that makes the idea a bad thing. I think the idea I think the idea is the right way to go at this point. But but see, here's the thing. I think you need to have the right producer in place, even if you're on a 6-month cycle. I don't know, whatever cycle you're on, you need to have the right people in charge. So I think
Yeah.
that kind of goes without saying.
My point is,
And
on a 6-month cycle, you'd find out those mistakes sooner.
right, and it becomes more of an issue if we're stuck with this guy forever. Like, I mean, a lot of people would like to shorten the stay for the president right now, but
And that's actually a great metaphor, right?
right, they like to shorten the term from
Somebody
40
might
years to
say,
1 year.
well, maybe I think 6 years. A guy needs time to get his plans in place. You're
Right.
like, yeah, I don't want him to have that time.
Now, he won. Give him 1 year.
I think every year we should reevaluate this situation.
But like I do want to talk a little bit about kind of how I think it should look.
Yeah,
Like
please.
more specifically. I think everything that you do in terms of from a major structural standpoint should have a kill switch, right? And that's to guard against something like you're saying, something that just falls completely apart. Worst case scenario, we revert back to the last version. Worst case scenario, right? The last version, which is probably one that maybe people didn't think were perfect. But if this new thing falls completely apart, people will welcome that old version back with open arms because at least they could play it. At least they could whatever, right? So that's the kill switch, right? But for me, I think through the time period, you have to be very, very communicative in terms of saying, here's what you get throughout the year in between releases. And you have to make good on whatever you say you're going to get. So if it's 2K for my team, you're going to get weekly moment card releases, or you're going to get weekly signature pack releases. You're going to get, this is what you're going to get, and a detailed thing, because from a financial standpoint, the way the developer or the publisher is going to make their money, because that's one thing people are going to say, well, why would they do that? Why would they just eliminate an entire year of sales? Yeah. Well, to me, at this point now, we need to go to subscription services. I think that you need to pay. I think that people would go for paying one time a year to have access to download this game, the entire game, for the cost of their their subscription, as well as an extended subscription service that gives them some VC payout every month automatically. So they get VC payday every single month. That gives them a certain amount of VC every month. And this lingo can be translated to whatever game or environment. Gives them a certain amount of packs each month. Now they can still go and buy above and beyond that if they want to go higher. But if you have the subscription service, you get pretty much everything, just about everything reasonably that you would need. And it's really no difference than the boost that you get when you buy the limited edition. And other people only buy the standard edition, so they don't get the 250,000 VC that comes with it, or whatever it is that you're going to get. And then in terms of obviously roster updates, you get that. And there has to be a team that's committed to making sure that that is consistent and it's as up to date as possible. And you're like just the constant content updates. And it has to be more than what we see currently with a lot of these games. Like, guys, if you have a biannual release, I will, every time a guy changes his hairstyle or facial hair, we should see a change within.
I'm with you on that. So I think for me, the answer to improving the quality of games, honestly, is all of these games need to be more like UFC in terms of the updates. I would actually say they need to be more like Destiny and Overwatch and MMO games, because 2K is an MMO. Like,
it is,
right? We've discussed this before. But 2K doesn't have MMO type maintenance and updates and features.
Right.
So 2K needs basically an MMO feature seasonal update strategy team. They need an offline feature strategy team. And then they need a structural team. Now, I think the thing that would solve everything is if 2K did what Call of Duty did, and they had Treyarch makes this Call of Duty, which is coming out here, and this other squad, Respawn back in the day, makes this Call of Duty, which comes out here. So we're getting yearly releases, but we're not squeezing it into a 9-month cycle for any one development team. I honestly think 2K just needs to expand their squad and know when they have a year that's like a big year and a year that's a medium year, and eliminate small years.
I totally agree. I think that is exactly, yes. That is a very good way to get to what I'm talking about, essentially, because and that's kind of what I was alluding to. You're going to have to bring in more people to do this. Not I don't think it's as many people as it might seem, because now I think they're already multitasking across several of these different development studios. There's a lot of people already doing that. But I do think, I think what you're saying with the Call of Duty references is on point, though.
Yeah, and because the important thing about 2K is there are 3 ways to upgrade the game, basically. You upgrade with features, you upgrade with basic mechanics, and you also upgrade with the amount of events that are there. Events are not to be confused with features. A feature is something that launches with the game, like Pro-Am, My Career, My League. That's a feature. An event is something like Reese's and all that other stuff.
Yeah, my League Unlimited tournament and all that. Right. I mean, my Team Unlimited tournament.
And the structure is stuff like speed differential, ball handling packages, how they interact with defensive, interactions and all that other stuff. And I think the biggest flaw in 2K is actually the technical side of it is the number one flaw.
Absolutely.
The controls are very dated and bad feeling. It's just one of the worst feeling video games in terms of the video game part of it. Does it really feel good to dribble in that game? I don't think it does. Does it really feel good to move around in that game? I think it feels way worse to move around in 2K than it does in almost any video game because of just the level of delay that's on your character. Just go into the game, press left on your stick, and watch what your character does. He moves his head to the side and doesn't move his feet. Like, that's not what you want when you move left on a stick in anything, right? You want your stick to move the character in a basically the illusion of a one-to-one relationship. That's the kind of stuff that 2K needs to change in order to get to be a competitive game. And that's the stuff that needs a lot more time. I think what needs more attention and more philosophical reform are their events, because the events are crazy stale in terms of the yearly seasonal interaction. Once you upgrade your player, there's almost no reason to play the game unless you just grind in wins for no reason. Like, you have nothing really to look forward to once your player reaches the rating that they want, or you have the deck that you want if you are playing my team.
Yeah. I would agree. I would agree for the most part. I think we've gotten to the point where we got used to the way that 2K controls. And if we like the game overall, then we're kind of like, yeah, well, it's 2K.
I'll be weak. I'm very unique.